The British Army since 2000 introduction. The British Army has undergone constant change to meet the many and conflicting challenges of war and peace that it has faced since it's acknowledged. Beginning some 350 years ago in the 17th century. Expansion, contraction, reorganization have punctuated those centuries in order to meet actual and perceived threats. Attempting to explain the evolution of the names of infantry units over just the past 200 years would require a small book in itself. Take merely as an example, one of today's new large regiments. The Rifles and Trace, just one of the antecedent units of its 1st Battalion. Back to its origins as the 99th later, Lanarkshire Regiment of Foot in 1824, or investigate how the Rifles in 2012 came to include in its 5 regular battalions to light infantry, 1 mechanized, infantry, and 1 commando battalion. There is no place in a book of this size for more than the briefest glance at such complexities as they have surfaced in the past 25 years. Osprey last gave the modern British Army detailed coverage in 1987 in Mike Chappell's Elite 14, the British Army in the 1980s. That Armithan contained about 160,000 regular soldiers and more than 70,000 in the UTA, Territorial Army. Soon the regulars will have reduced to about half their 1987 figure, while the strength of the territorials will be, on paper at least, around the 30,000 mark. The intervening years have seen major reductions and reorganizations and new roles and deployments as a result of the world's ever-changing political
howdies.
The Army of 1987, while dealing with the major challenges of the troubles in Northern Ireland and manning a number of overseas garrisons, was also squarely focused on the sprint posed by the Warsaw Pact. To face the latter, more than 1/3 of the army was stationed in the British Army of the Rhine, with 4 fighting divisions allotted to 1st British Corps. By 2009, the 1 remaining division in Germany contained just 2 brigades, with all remaining troops due to be withdrawn by 2018. Reorganization is one thing, but the army also had to shift its whole mindset away from the armored nuclear battlefield to the demands of major counterinsurgency operations overseas, and as this book goes to print, to their aftermath. The purpose of this book, while it cannot hope to be a fully comprehensive account, is to provide a concisely detailed description of the British Army during the first decade and a half of the 21st century. To put the army of today in context, it has been necessary not only to list the main organizational changes since 2000, but also to track the earlier restructuring resulting from the end of the Cold War and the 2 main defense reviews in 1990. Options for change or options in 1998, the Strategic Defense Review. The last decade of the 20th century also saw the final years of major military efforts in Northern Ireland and peacekeeping operations in the Balkans and elsewhere. These all shaped the Army of 2000. The army that began the new century had settled down after options, with new organizations in place for a number of regiments and major restructuring of the majority of the services, but operational roles were still largely the same. And it looked very much like the army of the previous decade, having in those years adopted new combat uniforms and much new equipment. In mid-decade, the army, while getting to grips with 2 serious wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, underwent some of its most dramatic changes, with, in effect, the final demise of the old regimental system established under the Cardwell-Childers reforms of the 1870s. The future army structure FOSS, announced in 2004, necessarily receives close examination in these pages. New structures, new badges, new uniforms, and much new equipment were all in place by the close of that decade. Then the biggest transformion of all was announced, with the AAS, Strategic Defense and Security Review, SDSR, F 2010. The resultant Army 2020 will be organized very differently from the army that's gone before. Throughout, this story must be told against the backdrop of operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. The overall result is an army that, while thoroughly grounded in its past, looks vastly different from even 15 years ago, but which, for its size, has considerable capability in its units and its brigades. The Army's equipment has also changed dramatically. The focus on conventional warfare emphasized heavy armor and anti-tank weapons. The major counterinsurgency campaigns overseas, while employing some heavy armor, have seen the introduction, usually by way of urgent operational requirements (UORs), of fleets of heavily protected lighter vehicles. A wide array of additional small arms and support weapons have also been brought into service. In 2004 saw the initial issue of the long-awaited Bowman digital communication system. In 1980, platoon commanders still carried whistles and needed them. By 2005, every infantryman in the ranks had a personal roll, radio PRR. Comprehensive details of all the separate items, the uniform and equipment, cannot be included in a book of this modest size. But much is shown and identified in the photographs and color plates. No attempt is made here to comment on policy decisions, nor can justice be done to every organization in the Army, including the training, organization, or two organizational details at unit level. It should be noted, too, that this text has been written during a period of huge change, with some details pertaining to Army 2020 still fluid at the time of writing. The Army's role and character. Tasks. The Army's role is traditionally defined within a set of military tasks drawn from the defense planning assumptions. These tasks are reconfirmed or redefined in each security review, and thus, most recently in SDSR 2010. These reviews set out the overall contribution of the whole armed forces to national security, from defense of the UK to the projection of military power overseas, and, as a result of SDSR, henceforth they are to take place every 5 years. While based on an overall plan, the Army's own contribution naturally depends on the requirements of each operation being undertaken. As well as any enduring commitments, much of this book focuses on an Army based on the outcome of SDR 1998, albeit that for much of the intervening period, it is also repeatedly reorganized to deal with combat and stabilization operations. In Iraq and Afghanistan, the Army 2020 study of 2012 concluded that strategic circumstances dictate that the Army needs to evolve so that it can face future threats effectively. In essence, the Army would move on from its current structure and capabilities, which are optimized for operations in Afghanistan, to a more adaptable posture able to meet future demands. The future role of the Army has thus been defined within 3 core capabilities: a contingent capability for deterrence and defense, overseas engagement and capacity building, and civil engagement in the military, contribution to homeland resilience, and all from a UK-based Army. The result will be an Army structured more for graduated readiness than for executing an enduring operation. It is therefore to have a new, integrated structure of regulars and reserves. It will have a clear delineation of roles, by way of a reaction force, with formations and units at highest readiness, and an adaptable force at lower readiness, all supported by force troops. The adaptable force and force troops will also have regional responsibilities across the UK. With sufficient notice and preparation, the infantry brigades of the adaptable force will provide a brigade contribution to enduring stabilization operations. Clearly, however, the nature of future operations can never be predicted for certain, and organizing, equipping, and training the Army for what might happen are constant challenges with all operational commitments, having major effects on all peacetime assumptions. Character. The British Army has a character very much of its own, despite the many changes over the centuries. For the greater part of its history, it has been a volunteer force, and its strength has been underpinned by the so-called regimental system, of which more later. The Army's position in society remains ambiguous, as immortalized long ago in Rudyard Kipling's poem, Tommy, I Can Zet. The British soldier has been highly regarded in war, but invariably less so in peacetime. The unpopularity at home of the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, has not made the Army itself any less popular. Indeed, the public has rallied to support its soldiers in ways not previously seen since 1945. In an attempt to enshrine government support in actual legislation, a military covenant has been created, laying out for the first time the country's legal commitment to supporting its service personnel in return for their commitment and sacrifice. In referring to the soldier, the public, and the press continue to hang on to the term squatty, something of a legacy of the post-1945 generation of national service conscripts. It is not used within the Army, where Tom is the common term of endearment and respect, with its obvious link to Kipling. The Army modernizes constantly and goes to great lengths to keep up with the times while maintaining the fundamentals of military capability and discipline. So, in addition to the various structural changes over the years, the Army has also embraced a number of institutional changes. While institutional, racism was a fairly inconspicuous but nevertheless unpalatable reality. Some decades ago, great strides were made subsequently to achieve racial equality, marked finally by the recruitment of Black and Asian soldiers into the equality for women was initiated with the disbandment of the Women's Royal Army Corps WRAC in 1992, with all female soldiers henceforward being recruited directly into other regiments and corps. Their employment is still restricted, officially, to non-frontline roles, although this is more realistically defined as non-participation in dismounted close combat. But while women are not allowed to join armored or infantry regiments, the deployment in Afghanistan of, for example, female helicopter pilots, artillery, and engineer officers renders the restrictions somewhat illusory. There is some controversy over the number of troops born overseas. In 2012, for example, foreign-born soldiers, including the 3,680-strong Brigade of Gurkhas, constituted a record 12% of manpower, around 38. Countries in addition to Nepal are represented in the Army, all except ERA, as being Commonwealth countries. Most such personnel are from Africa and the Caribbean, but with around 2,200 Fiji provides the highest single number, and there are over 800 South Africans and 800 Ghanaians. Composition. Over the past 25 years, radical structural changes have occurred from top to bottom of the Army. This book must necessarily track these changes, linking them to the Army of today being defined as 2013, but given the continuing transition towards 2020, the term is something of a moving target. The Army has long comprised two armies within it, the full-time component known as the regular Army or regulars, and the part-time component known as the Territorial Army TA or Territorials, and now increasingly identified as reserves. While officialdom has long attempted to call this one Army, Army 2020 will actually see the full integration of the regulars and the reserves within a single force structure. Nomenclature. It's a word on the British Army's idiosyncratic nomenclature, and some definition, of terms are necessary for the sake of civilian and overseas readers, since many of the terms used have come to have, over the passage of many years, confusingly different meanings depending upon the context. The essential distinction to grasp is between administrative identities and operational identities, the latter used in this context to mean the groupings in which troops are assembled to actually deploy and fight. Any reader who is completely unfamiliar with this world may find it easiest to think of the administrative identity as a family of soldiers usually wearing the same cap, badge, and the operational identities as the employers to which different family members disperse for work. A formation is defined as a brigade, division, or higher. A unit is an infantry battalion or a cavalry or artillery regiment, which are of roughly similar size and are comparable when referred to in an operational sense. The definition is not helped by the fact that administrative infantry regiments may contain either a number of operational battalions or, in some cases, only one. Another type of temporary tactical unit is the battle group, which is discus setablo, under the Army on operations and at war. A subunit is a company, squadron, or battery within an infantry, cavalry, or artillery unit. The meanings of the terms corps and division also differ depending on context. In the operational context, a corps is a fighting formation, made up of a number of fighting divisions. In this sense, the Army retains one fighting corps headquarters, albeit in its guise as the NATO ACE, Allied Command Europe Rapid Reaction. Other than that, corps means an entirely administrative structure overseeing certain arms and services, such as, for example, the Royal Armoured Corps or the Royal Logistic Corps, and should be viewed as part of the Army's wider system of regimental families. In addition to the operational divisions and the divisional organization that was present within the UK up until 2012, the infantry also sits within a wholly separate framework of administrative divisions titled Queens, Kings, etc., under Headquarters Infantry. Headquarters Royal Armoured Corps exercises a similar role over all the cavalry and tank regiments, but the household cavalry and the regiments of foot guards sit within their own administrative headquarters. The Household Division, the Royal Regiment of Artillery, has its own rules, in that it is akin to one of the administrative corps, and its subordinate tactical units are all designated as regiments. Though all gunners are proud members of one regiment, strengths. In 2000, regular strength was about 109,500 personnel, plus about 3,800 Gurkhas. Reductions resulting from FAS 2004 brought that regular strength down to some 102,000. The most dramatic reduction of all will result from SDSR 2010, bringing regular strength down to 82,000 by 2018. The TA's current constitution is defined under the Reserve Forces Act, 1996. It contains three main categories, of which Group A are the quarters and units providing the National Reserve, which can be employed at home or overseas. Between 2000 and 2012, the TA was whittled away from a figure of about 51,000 to some 19,000 personnel. Army 2020 declares that the total number of available forces will be rebalanced, and the loss of so many regulars will be compensated for by creating a larger number of reserve forces at 30,000, although the future reserves plan sees the total. The number of major units reduced from 71 to 68 by 2016. The territorials have more than proved themselves over lengthy operational deployments, 3,861. TA soldiers served in the 2003 invasion of Iraq alone. The Army also maintains the regular Army Reserve. This constitutes various categories depending mainly on length of regular service and age. The basic principle is that all ex-regular soldiers have a reserve liability and can be subject to compulsory recall. Since 1997, all soldiers remain on the regular reserve or long-term reserve for 18 years from the EHE, date of completion of their full-time service, or until the age of 55. In 2003, 251 recalled regular reservists were deployed for the invasion of Iraq. Mention must also be made of the cadet forces. The Army Cadet Force is a national voluntary youth organization, and while not part of the Army, is sponsored by it. It has more than 1,700 detachments across 57 counties and is an important source of recruits for the Army. In addition, the combined cadet forces in the largely private school sector include Army detachments, higher command. The head of the armed forces is the reigning monarch, but direct command, control, and management are provided by the Ministry of Defense (MOD). At its head sits the Secretary of State for Defense. He is assisted by two principal advisors, the Permanent Secretary, a civil servant, and the Chief of the Defense Staff, CDS, the officer who is the professional head of the armed forces. This post is rotated between the three armed services, and when held by an Army officer, it used to be filled by a field marshal. That rank was suspended in peacetime in 1997, and the post has since been held by a four-star general or the equivalent in the Royal Navy or Royal Air Force. The professional head of the Army is the Chief of the General Staff CGs, another four-star appointment. The Army is governed by the Army Board, which is chaired by the Secretary of State, although CGS chairs his own Executive Committee of the Army Board, ECAB. Away from the top-level headquarters, the field army was once divided between two four-star headquarters, Headquarters United Kingdom Land Forces HQ UKLF at Wilton in Wiltshire, and Headquarters British Army of the Rheinbohr at Rheindahlen in West Germany. There were additional overseas garrisons, including, until 1997, a substantial commitment to Hong Kong. The major reductions and reorganizations that resulted from the effective end of the Cold War saw the closure of HQ Bohr in March 1994. Command of the Field Army was brought together at Wilton in April 1995, when HQ UKLF was renamed Headquarters Land Command. Between 1995 and 2008, CGS governed the Army through three subordinate headquarters: Land Command, responsible for operational command of about 75% of the Army's manpower; Adjutant General's Branch, responsible for personnel, individual training, doctrine, and administration; Equipment Support Land. Following FOS 2004, HQ Land Command became HQ Land Forces in 2008 and moved to Andover in 2009. Finally, at least for the purposes of this book, the various Army staffs were amalgamated in November 2011 into a single staff working out of Army Headquarters at Marlborough Lines, Andover. CGS now commands through three subordinate 3-stars, Lieutenant Generals, Commander, Land Forces CLF, the Adjutant General, and Commander Force. Development and training with CLF now Primus Inter Pares as CGS's deputy, and holding from 2011 effective command of the whole of the British Army's fighting capability. Command during actual operations will usually be devolved to a deployed Joint Force Commander, but this is complemented by Army Headquarters' role of delivering and sustaining the Army's operational capability. To achieve this, CLF had, up to 2013, 9 subordinate commands, as shown in Table 1. However, Army 2020 will see further restructuring, renaming. Land Forces structure. With reference to Table 1, it is important to detail the actual structure of Land Forces and to note the differences between the Army pre- and post SDSR 2010 and the consequences of the Army 2020 program. A distinction must also be made between the peacetime structure of Land Forces, which has a large, operationally ready structure within it, and the organization of Land Forces for actual operations, the 1990s, from Bohr to Arc. The principal high-level fighting formation of the Cold War era was first British Corps, based for most of its life at Bielefeld in West Germany. Following the disbandment of 1st British Corps in 1992, the UK continued to provide the overall command structure to NATO's newly created HQ Arc. This headquarters took over the facilities of HQ Bohr at Rheindahlen in 1994, till it moved to Innsworth in the UK in 2010. Like the other 5 NATO Corps headquarters, HQ Arc has no permanently assigned divisions in peacetime, but did provide the command element to operations in Bosnia in 1996 and in Kosovo in 1999, and subsequently in support of the International Security Assistance Force ISAF in Afghanistan. Should HQARC deploy? In a general war setting, it is likely that its assigned subordinate formations would include a good part of UK land forces. At the time of Options 1990, the ready element of the Army contained 1st Corps with 4 subordinate divisions, 3 of them armored 1st, 3rd, and 4th based in Germany, and an infantry division 2nd based in the UK. 1st and 4th armed divs each contained 3 armored brigades, 7th, 12th, and 22nd, and 11th, 20th, and 33rd, respectively. 3rd armed div had 2 armored brigades, 4th and 6th, and the UK-based 19th INF BDE, and 2nd INF div had 1 regular brigade, 24th, and 2 territorial brigades, 15th and 49th. At the same time, UKLF contained 3 independent brigades, 1st and 2nd, IF Beads and 5th Airborne BDE. The Northern Ireland Command had 2, later increased for the second time to 3 infantry brigades, 3rd, 8th, and 39th, although most of its units were on short operational tours, having been signed from other formations. The TA also contained 4 infantry brigades, 43rd, 51st, 52nd, and 54th organized primarily for home defense. Headquarters 2nd Inth. Div and 4th Arm Div were disbanded in 1992 and 1993 respectively, with the various brigade headquarters being reduced, as described later. Home Garrison. In the mid-1990s, the UK's home garrison was reorganized, the old districts being placed in a new regional structure under HQ Regional Forces. Commander Regional Forces had under him for Regional Regenerative Formations, HQ 2nd Div in Edinburgh, HQ 4th Div in Aldershot, HQ 5th Div in Shrewsbury, and HQ London District. These contained between them 11 regional brigades and all of the UK garrisons, see Table 2. The brigades, in turn, contained the majority of TA units and a number of regular units not assigned to operational formations. Thus, all UK-based units, whether or no part of the operational structure, were administered by these formations. London District commands all units located within the M25 motorway. Its primary function is ceremonial, and GOC London is also therefore the Major General commanding the Household Division. Northern Ireland is not shown in either table as HQ Northern Ireland, which commanded all its formations and units assigned to the province. For much of its existence, it comprised the 3 regular infantry brigades mentioned above, plus 1 TA brigade, 107th Ulster. As the troubles diminished, units were gradually withdrawn, and the operational structure was drawn down. 39th Inth BDE absorbed 3rd Inth BDE in September 2004 and 8th Inth BDE in September 2006. In December 2006, 39th BDE merged with 107th BDE, being retitled 38th BDE in August 2007, and combining at the same time with the remnants of HQ Northern Ireland. The latter was formally dissolved in January 2009. BDE then being placed under HQ 2nd Division. Restructuring, post-SDSR 2010. Following SDSR 2010, the entire regional organization was restructured and ordered to support the changes required for Army 2020. This includes the concept of the UK as the firm base within which regional forces continue to support the Army's nationwide responsibilities, but at the same time being better organized to sustain and support commands deployed on operations. Headquarters Regional Forces was thus disbanded in January 2012. It was replaced by HQ Support Command, with responsibility for all remaining regional forces outside London District and a separate HQ Scotland. These were all 2-star headquarters and can be identified in Table 1. The Generative Divisional Headquarters were then also disbanded, 4th Div in January 2012, 2nd and 5th Divs in April 2012. In 2013, HQ Support Command drew down to a 2-star formation, responsible for running all remaining regional brigades. As such, it will also absorb HQ Scotland when that becomes HQ 51st Infantry Brigade. Outside the UK Support Command Germany did a similar job to HQ Support Command. It was set up in Rindelan on the disbandment of HQ BAOR in 1994, and in 2013 it was renamed HQ British Forces Germany and moved to Bielefeld. It provided administrative and infrastructure support to what remains of the Army state in Germany. Both HQ Support Command and HQ BFG will disband. On the establishment of HQ 1st Div in the UK and the final withdrawal from Germany, the Army also retains a significant, if reduced, presence in overseas garrisons, training units and training day and advisory teams. There are 4 remaining garrisons: Falkland Islands, Gibraltar, Cyprus, and Brunei, Belize. Having closed in 2011, Brunei is Hometo, an important jungle training school, and the Army carries out training exercises in a number of foreign countries on a regular basis. For example, Poland has hosted brigades and units from 1st Armed Div since the 1990s, and Jordan sees frequent training exercises for light forces. The most important operational training units are, for armored forces especially, British Army Training Unit Suffield Batus in Canada, and for light troops British Army Training Unit Kenya Batuk. Training and advisory teams are spread around the world and are expanded or reduced as the situation dictates. In 2013 there were about 20 of these active in different countries, the most significant being in Sierra Leone, Ghana, East Africa, based in Kenya, South Africa, Oman, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, and Mali. Finally, it should be noted that a number of Army Commando units and subunits are permanently assigned to 3rd Commando BDE in the Royal Navy. The principal units are 29 CDO Regent, Royal Artillery, and 24 CDO Regent. Royal Engineers, although the latter will disband in 2015. Additionally, 1st BN. The Rifles became part of the Commando Brigade in 2008, but will move to the Adaptive Force under Army 2020. Peacetime operational formations pressed DSR 2010. The remaining formations in Table 1 represented CLF's operational formations. First, Armed Div, 3rd Div, Joint Helicopter Command containing significant RN and RF elements, and theater troops, which will become Force Troops Command under Army 2020. Only the 2 ready divisions, 1st Armed and 3rd, can be described as true operational formations, capable of deploying and fighting in their own right, while the other 2 provide critical support and enabling activities. In addition to the 2 ready divisions, in August 2008, due to the requirement to command operations in Iraq and Afghanistan simultaneously, HQ 6 Div was established in York to take its turn in Afghanistan. It was subsequently disbanded in April 2011. Table 3 shows the 2 ready divisions, their subordinate brigades, and the 1 independent brigade in land forces. As of 2013, in addition to their brigades, each division contains a number of divisional troops under direct command, including signals, engineers, aviation, military police, logistics, and maintenance units. Each of the brigades contains a number of assigned regular units. 4. Much of the Army's existence, the units within any brigade, as well as the divisional units, were subject to periodic change. While armored artillery and engineer regiments did move from one station to another, a typical peacetime tour for an armored regiment in Germany was 12 years in any one. Brigade and artillery and engineer regiments would stay far longer in one place. However, infantry battalions invariably moved every 2 to 3 years. Although the normal tour for armored infantry was 5 to 6 years, the annual notification of moves of units was called the arms plot. This was finally stopped in 2008 to reduce the constant need to retrain units for new roles and the great costs involved in moving soldiers and their families. Unit moves have not halted altogether, and the readjustments required for Made Army 2020 will see the remainder of the Army brought back from Germany. In the infantry alone, 16 battalions will move station. The number and types of units in each brigade depend on its overall role. Again, it must be noted that for deployments on actual operations brigades are often restructured as described later. Table 3 shows that in 2013 the Army had 8 ready brigades of 4 types: armored, mechanized, light, and air assault. Each of these types has a different structure, and those of the same type also have different combinations of units depending largely on availability. The types of units are given in detail under regiments and corps below. In 2008 HQ 11th, Light BDE was activated at Aldershot as an additional formation headquarters for Afghanistan. It was subsequently disbanded in mid-2010, but will be resurrected in Aldershot in 2014 by the amalgamation of 2nd and 145th Brigades. Restructuring operational formations for Army 2020. All of the above is set to change radically with Army 2020, which seeks to provide an even more adaptable and flexible UK-based force, and 1. Removed from the present optimization of structure and training for an enduring operation, i.e. Afghanistan. Graduated readiness is the objective, and the armored infantry is to be the core capability with tanks organized for intimate support. The 3 key elements are: The Reaction Force C, Table 4, will provide the higher readiness forces, trained and equipped to undertake short-notice contingency tasks, predominantly regulars. Under HQ 3rd Div, it will have 3 armored infantry AI brigades stationed around the Salisbury Plain training area, and 16th Air Assault Brigade. Each AI brigade will contain an armored cavalry regiment, an armored main battle tank regiment, 2 AI battalions, and 1 heavy protected mobility infantry battalion. The 3 AI brigades will rotate through annual cycles of lead, training, and other tasks, with a lead brigade providing a lead battle group and 16th Air Assault, BDE, a lead task. Force at very high readiness. 101st Logistic BDE is integral, but all combat support and additional combat service support are allocated for training and operations as required. The Adaptable Force C Table 5 is a pool of regulars and reserves, organized under HQ 1st Div, containing 7 regionally based infantry, BRIGADEs, and 102nd Logistic Brigade. This force will be responsible for the Army's standing commitments to Cyprus, Brunei, the Falklands, public duties, and the UN for overseas military capacity building, for support to homeland resilience, and for supporting any enduring operations. The infantry brigades will each contain a mix of light cavalry regiments, light, protected mobility infantry battalions, and light role infantry battalions, all paired with reserve units. Integral to both forces is HQ Force Troops Command and its constituent trages, see Table 6. The regiments and corps, organization, and roles of the regiments and corps of the Army are complicated by the historical basis of the structure as a whole of each arm and service, and of each regiment and corps. This chapter describes the organization and roles in peacetime as of 2013, noting all preceding changes since 1990 and the changes to be enacted under Army 2020. The Army remains wedded to the ethos of the regimental system, a unique historical structure that might be criticized for a degree of parochialism and lack of cohesion above the regimental level, but whose strength is also greater than the sum of its parts. The system has endured constant change, as this book testifies, but it has proven strength within it, which lies at the heart of the Army's fighting power. It has meant that the soldier continues to identify far more readily with his regiment or corps, his cap badge, than with any brigade or division to which his unit is assigned. That may change as Air Assault of Army 2020, which we'll see. Units become more permanently assigned than ever before to higher combined arms formations. Regimental tradition, which is as relevant to the corps as it is to the actual regiments, lies at the core of the system. Great efforts are made to preserve these traditions as far as possible through every period of change. While those serving and veterans alike might mourn the loss of their old title and badge, there is certainly no hint of diminished capability as a result. The new badge is soon accepted, particularly after the first operational tour, and becomes as sacred to its wearers as the badges of their forebears had been. Even when units require major reinforcement during an operation, and the reinforced units' cap badge is therefore diluted by incomers, the reinforcements from other incomers and corps quickly become wedded to their new family. Before Options 1990, the Army categorized all regiments and corps as belonging either to the arms or the services. The arms were further divided between teeth arms, the armor and infantry, and support arms, the artillery, engineers, and aviation. The services were defined as all of those corps that supported the arms. Today, all are more clearly categorized in 3 ways: combat units armor, infantry, and aviation, combat support; units artillery, engineers, and signals; and combat service support CSS, units which comprise all the logistic and administrative elements. The order of precedence of all regiments and corps is decided largely, but not invariably, by the date of formation of the original antecedent unit since the 1660s. Anyone comparing today's list with that of pre-Options 1990 will notice a number of missing cap badges and a number of new ones, and this is explained below. For brevity, except where necessary, the definite article. The is not used in these lists of titles. Many regiments also bear additional, traditional titles, and these two are omitted here. Household cavalry and Royal Armored Corps. Although grouped together in what may loosely be described as the tank arm of the army, these are two distinct corps. All of the regiments that comprise the Household Cavalry and Royal Armored Corps have entirely separate regimental distinctions, but all are grouped under the RAC for administrative purposes. In 2013, the regular regiments had two main roles: armored equipped with Challenger 2 main battle tanks and formation. Reconnaissance equipped with scimitar, CVRT. The RAC also included for formed TA regiments of yeomanry. Army 2020 will reorganize the regiments into three types: armored with Challenger 2 MBT, and in the formation reconnaissance role for reaction. Force and adaptable force brigades respectively, armored cavalry and light cavalry. Armored cavalry will initially retain CVRT to be replaced with General Dynamics Scout, part of the future rapid effects system. Light cavalry will have Jackal and lighter utility vehicles. The listing of regiments shows their current role, followed by their future Army 2020 role and brigade, in brackets. Household cavalry. Created in 1991 from a grouping of the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals, both are represented in equal part in the regiment's two units. Household Cavalry Regent, HCR formation, reconnaissance armored cavalry, 1st AIBDE. Household Cavalry, Mounted Regent, HCMR, Mounted Ceremonial, London District. Line Cavalry and Royal Tank Regiment. The Line Cavalry comprises 8 regiments, reducing to 7 under Army 2020. First, the Queen's Dragoon Guards QDG formation, reconnaissance light cavalry, 7th BDE. Royal Scots Dragoon Guards Scots DG, armored light cavalry, 51st BDE. Royal Dragoon Guards are DG formed in 1992 from 4th 7th Royal Dragoon Guards and 5th Royal Inniskillian Dragoon Guards. Armored Red Cavalry, 20th AIBDE. Queen's Royal Hussars QRH formed in 1993 from Queen's Own Hussars. And Queen's Armored, 20th AIBDE. 9th, 12th Royal Lancers 912L Formation Reconnaissance by 2015. Amalgamates with Queen's Royal Lancers to form Royal Lancers Armored. Quavely 12th AIBDE. King's Royal Hussars KRH formed in 1992 from Royal Hussars and 14th 20th King's Hussars. Armored 12th AIBDE. Light Dragoons LD formed in 1992 from 13th 18th Royal Hussars and 15th 19th King's Royal Hussars. Formation Reconnaissance Light Cavalry, 4th BDE. Queen's Royal Lancers QRL formed in 1993 from 16th 5th Queen's Royal Lancers and 17th 21st Lancers. Formation Reconnaissance C9th 12th. Pre-options 1990, there were 4 regiments within the Royal Tank Regiment. 1, 2, 3, and 4 RTR. These units were merged into 1 and 2 RTR in 1992 by amalgamation of, respectively, 1st and 4th Regents and 2nd and 3rd. While 2 RTR retained its armored, Rule 1 RTR lost its purely armored status when it became with elements of the Royal Yeomanry and RF Regent, part of the new Joint Nuclear, Biological and Chemical Regent in 1999. This was retitled the Joint Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Regent in 2005. This regiment was disbanded in 2011, with all CBRN activities transferred to the RAF. Throughout this time, 1 RTR retained 1 armored squadron at the AR Warminster Training Center. Under Army 2021, RTR returns to the armored role, but by 2015 will amalgamate, with 2 RTR being assigned to 1st AI Brigade. Yeomanry. All of the old territorial regiments of Yeomanry Cavalry are represented in some way in the army. In addition, Tuthfer formed regiments, all, containing squadrons drawn from a number of antecedent regiments, all of. The other yeomanry regiments are represented in the territorial Ra-Re, are signals infantry, AAC, RLC, and AMS. The organization and roles off and roll regiments are Royal Yeomanry reformed in 1967 from 5 antecedent yeomanry regiments: Royal Wiltshire, Leicestershire and Derbyshire, Kent and Yorkshire Sharpshooters, Sherwood Rangers, Inns of Court and City. The regiment re-rolled from medium reconnaissance to NBC defense in 1996. On the formation of the joint NBC Regent in 1999, 2 squadrons of the RY were assigned as NBC reserves, while the remaining 3 became Challenger 2. From 2006, all 5 squadrons provided CBRN reconnaissance as part of the joint CBRN regiment. The 2020 designation is Reserve Light Cavalry in 7th Brigade. Royal Wessex Yeomanry, RWY, formed in 1971 by amalgamation of the Royal Wiltshire Yeomanry, Gloucestershire Hussars, and Royal Devon Yeomanry. The new regiment received its own royal title in 1979. In July 1999, it merged with the Dorset Yeomanry and took on the role of Challenger to crew replacement. The 2020 designation is Reserve Armoured in the Reaction Force. Royal Mershon and Lancastrian Yeomanry, RMLY, formed in 1992 from the ALD's own Mershon Yeomanry, representing the old Staffordshire, Warwickshire, Worcestershire, Shropshire and Cheshire units, and the Herefordshire Light Infantry and Duke of Lancaster's own Yeomanry. In 1999, a squadron of the Queen's Own Yeomanry was absorbed. Current role is to provide trained replacement tank crewmen for the regular army. Army 2020 will break up the RMLY. Its squadrons will move to the other yeomanry regiments, while its headquarters will be assigned to 51st BDE and renamed HQ Scottish and North Irish Yeomanry. Queen's Own Yeomanry COI, formed in 1971 as 2nd Armed Car Regiment from 5 yeomanry regiments: Ayrshire, North Irish Horse, Fife, and Forfar, and Scottish Horse, Northumberland Hussars, Yorkshire, all represented. In its 5 squadrons, it has maintained the armored reconnaissance role. Its 2020 designation is Reserve Light Cavalry in 4th Brigade. Royal Regiment of Artillery. The Royal Artillery RA, the artillery corps of the Army, and known as the Gunners, has, since the 1990s, assumed surveillance and target acquisition stub roles, in addition to its traditional fire support tasks. The subunit of a regiment is a battery, and the loyalty of a gunner is largely to battery first and regiment second. The batteries all bear historical names, a very complex mixture of letters, numbers, titles, and battle honors. For example, 1 RHA includes a battery, the Chestnut Troop. 12. RA includes 12 Minden Battery. And 16 RA includes 30 Battery Rogers Company. The operational emphasis was for many years on the heavy end of artillery, large caliber tracked self-propelled guns, multi-barreled rocket launchers, and air defense. While this capability has been maintained in part, the requirement to fight the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan has seen the mothballing of some heavier weapons and some re-equipping with lighter caliber towed artillery. Field regiments, now redesignated as Close Support CS regiments, are equipped with the 155mm AS-90 tracked self-propelled gun or the 105mm L100. All AS-90 regiments are routinely retrained on the Ott-like gun prior to redeployment to Afghanistan. CS regiments include the Royal Horse Artillery RA, an historical title that has nothing to do with its modern role, although RA also includes the King's Troop, an entirely ceremonial battery equipped with horse-drawn 13 PDR guns of Great War. Vintage depth fire regiments are re-equipped with the guided multi-launch rocket system GMLR. The air defense and STA roles are combined in some regiments. Air defense equipment comprises the Rapier low-level missile system, the Starstrike high-velocity missile HVM. STA units are equipped with an array of ground-based and aerial STA systems, including unmanned aerial vehicles UAVs, Prior to Options 1990, there were 23 regular artillery regiments of all types plus 6 regiments in the TA. Options 1990 reduced this to 17 regular regiments, and in 1998 a 7th Territorial Regiment was resurrected. 1. Rapier-equipped Air Defense Regiment 22 was disbanded in 2004, and a number of regiments have been re-rolled as required. In 2013, 5 CS regiments, 1 RHA, 3 RHA, 4 RA, 19 RA, and 26 RA were equipped with AS-90 and 37 Para, RHA, 29 CDO RA, and 40 RA with the light gun. 40 RA will be disbanded, and 5 RA's role is STA only, while 2 regiments remain dedicated to Air Defense 12 RA, with HVM and additional STA roles, and 16, 32 RA, and 47 RA are both equipped with UAVs. The one remaining GMLR's Regiment 39 also disbands at the end of 2015, from which point the remaining AS-90 regiments will each receive 1 GMLRS battery. 14 RA continues in the training role at the Royal School of Artillery, and the King's Troop, or HAC above, remains in service for ceremonial duties. Following the major restructuring of the TA in 2006, the 7 remaining volunteer artillery regiments were reorganized. 3 100, 103, and 105 RA are equipped with the light gun. 101 RA with GMRS, 104 RA with UAVs, and 106 RA with HVM. The 7th Regiment is the Honorable Artillery, Company HAC, which has an STA and covert observation post role. 100 RA will disband under the Future Reserves Plan. Regular regiments have usually been allocated to parent brigades, but under Army 2020, only 1 CS Regiment 7 RHA in 16th Air Assault BDE will retain this attachment, along with 29 RA in 3rd Commando Brigade. The majority will move to Force Troops Command. CS regiments and 3 reserve regiments 101, 103, and 105 RA will come under 1st Artillery BDE and all STA, and UAV regiments will go to 1st Intelligence and Surveillance Brigade. The 2 regular and 1 reserve air defense regiments will be assigned to the new Joint Ground-Based Air Defense Command under the RAF. Corps of Royal Engineers. The Royal Engineers, renowned as the Sappers, provide combat engineering, a wide array of military and conventional engineering requirements, as well as some specialist tasks such as explosive ordnance disposal (EOD) and search and diving. HQRE is at Chatham, and the Corps' training establishment is the Royal School of Military Engineering, which is divided between training schools at Chatham, Minley, and Melton Mowbray. When the Army was focusedly on operations in Northwest Europe, military engineering was biased heavily towards the provision of armored engineers and bridging equipment for the armored divisions. Iraq and Afghanistan have demanded different sapper efforts, but whatever the task, sappers have to continue to maintain 3 principal roles. Mobility support, for example, providing means to cross obstacles and bridge rivers. Counter-mobility, to deny enemy movement, for example laying minefields, and protection, for example constructing field defenses. Regiments are equipped according to their role. For many years, armored engineering suffered limitations due to obsolete equipment, with vehicles based on aged Centurion and Chieftain tank chassis known throughout the Army as the Antiques Roadshow, supporting the armored divisions. A major modernization program has seen the introduction since 2007 of a number of new equipments. These include the Trojan, a Challenger, 2MB to based Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers AVRA, the Titan, Armored Vehicle Launched Bridge AVLB, and the Terrier General Support Engineer Vehicle. In addition to the close support bridges mounted on AVLBs, the Bridge 1990 BR90 series includes the General Support Bridge, which uses the Automated Bridge Launching Equipment ABLE, the Medium Girder Bridge, the Logistics Support Bridge, and the Air Portable Ferry Bridge. There is also the M3 Amphibious Pontoon Bridge and Ferry Equipment. Traditionally, armored and field engineers have been in dedicated brigged, close support regiments 21, 22, 23, air assault, 24 CDO, 26, 32 and 35, with bridging and field support concentrated in the divisional general support regiments 28, 36 and 38. Other principal roles include airfield support 25 and 39 air, support regents, geographic support 42 geographic, and a substantial EOD capability in 33 and 101 regiments. The RIAS 5 TA regiments, the Royal Monmouthshire Engineers, plus 71, 7,273, and 75 regents, and 5 independent squadrons. Additionally, the regular and TA works groups attend to military infrastructure, and the staff corps provide civilian engineering, transport and logistics expertise. Under Army 2020 for regular regiments 24, 25, 28, and 38 and 2. Reserve regiments 72 and 73 will disband. Apart from 23 Air Assault Regiment in 16th Air Assault BDE, all other units will be placed in 8th Engineer BDE in the adaptive force. This also sees an increase in a number of hybrid units, defined as those containing a mix of. The 8th Engineer will comprise 25 Close Support Engineer Group, 21, 22, 26, 32, and 35 regents, of which 21 and 32 are hybrid. 12 Force Support Engineer Group, 36 and 39 regents, 71 and 75 reserve regents, 20 Works Group Air Support, 107 Engineer Group, 62, 63, 64, and 66 Works Groups, all hybrid, 65 Reserve Works Group, and Royal Monmouthshire Engineers, 29 EOD and Search Group, 33 and 101 regents, both hybrid. In addition, the group includes 11 IOD Regent, RLC, 1 Military Working Dogs Regent, RAVC, Royal Corps of Signals. While all units contain their own integral signalers responsible for internal and communications, all other communications, information systems, electronic, warfare, and signals intelligence are provided by the Royal Signals, our signals. Now, designated the Combat Command Support CCS Arm. The pre-2013 structure had 3 brigades, 1, 2, and 11, and associated regiments providing CCS to the ARC and Joint Rapid Reaction Force JRRF to close support. Regiments 1 and 3 as part of the Ready Divisions. 14 Electronic Warfare, and 18 UK SF Regents, plus 5 TA regiments, 3237, 38 to disband, 39 and 71. Each active brigade also maintained an integral, independent signal squadron. As with the similar corps, Army 2020 places the bulk of the Royal Signals in Force Troops Command, with only 18 Regent retaining its current affiliation. There will be 2 brigades, the all-regular 1st Signal BDE, supporting the ARC, and JRRF 22 and 30 Regents, and the ARC support BN, and the remainder in 11th Signal Brigade. 14 Regent will move to 1st Intelligence and Surveillance Brigade. The Infantry. The infantry is not a corps, but comprises 5 regiments of foot guards and Sezals, the regiments of the infantry of the line. Prior to options 1990, 38 regiments of guards and line infantry provided a total of 85 regular and territorial battalions. In addition, the Special Air Service Regiment had 3 battalions. There were 4 battalions of Gurkhas, and the Ulster Defence Regiment found 9 battalions. This gave a total of 101 infantry battalions of all types, plus 8 training depots countrywide and 2 infantry training schools at Warminster and Brecon. Considerable change in the intervening years has seen the numbers reduced to 55 battalions of all types and 20 regiments by 2015. The number of battalions will reduce further to 50. Pre-options 1990, there existed 3 main types of battalion: mechanized and the tracked FV-432 armored personnel carrier, air portable, and airborne. The warrior infantry fighting vehicle, which arrived in the late 1980s, provided for true armored infantry. Mechanized infantry was recategorized into mechanized tracked, still an FE 432, and mechanized. Wheeled in the Saxon APC. There continued to be a large number of battalions in the light role, a category that must not be confused with the regiment then called the light infantry. Army 2020 retains 6 battalions of armored infantry and upgraded warrior IFVs as well as light infantry, but a number of units will be reclassified as either heavy protected mobility, 1 battalion in each, armored infantry brigade equipped with Mastiff, or light protected mobility, 1 battalion in each infantry brigade equipped with Foxhound. The listings on pages 30-39 include all organizational changes since Options 1990. Most significant are the very major changes introduced under FAS 2004 and the accompanying future infantry structure, FIS, which saw the arrival of the large regiment. All of the few remaining county regiments were absorbed into the new larger regiments. These continue to be organized on either a national, regional, or functional basis, and differ in numbers of battalions. The infantry also continues to be organized for administrative purposes along divisional lines, but, as explained above, these divisions of infantry have no operational function. The original administrative divisions were set up in 1968 when the post-World War II brigade system was finally abandoned. The divisional system organizes the infantry regiments into a number of regionally based and nationally based structures. This never included the parachute regiment, and, while the Gurkhas were then in a division of sorts, it was called a brigade. Small divisional headquarters are to be maintained for the foreseeable future, within headquarters infantry at Warminster, and all infantry regiments also maintain their own regimental headquarters across the country. Territorials. Since 1988, there have been 4 major reorganizations of the territorial infantry. The complete restructuring of the TA in 1967 had included the creation of some entirely new regional regiments. All of the regiments of the Queens and Light divisions had had their territorial infantry incorporated within their respective large regiment structures on formation of the latter. But there were also isolated examples such as the creation of a 3rd Volunteer BN of the Worcestershire and a Sherwood Foresters Regiment on that regiment's formation in 1971. The next round of cuts to affect the TA were enacted in 1999. The result was 15 largely regional regiments, each with a single battalion and linked in a complicated web to the regular infantry regiments. These 15 TA regiments are listed in Table 7 below. The infantry of 2013, where they have come from, and the future effects of Army 2020 are listed below by administrative divisions. A summary of the regular and territorial infantry battalions is shown in regimental order of precedence as Table 8, page 32. Except for Para, the territorial or FON infantry battalions are all in the light role and under Army 2020. They become reserve light infantry in the brigades of the Adaptable Force Guards Division. The 5 regiments of foot guards have been maintained throughout all of the post-World War II reorganizations. However, though all 5 cap badges are intact, in 1992, the 3 senior regiments, the Grenadier, Coldstream, and Scots Guards all lost their 2nd battalions. These are officially in suspended animation with a company from each maintained within London District 4. Purely ceremonial functions. Thus, no. 2. Nijmeg and Koi. 2. Gren, GDS, no. 7. Koi to Koldum GDS, and F Koi to SG. Therefore, all 5 Guards regiments now have just 1 operational battalion. It is normal for 2 of them to be assigned at any one time to public duties within the royal household. All of the battalions rotating between this and conventional infantry roles. Army 2020 will concentrate all 5 battalions in the London and home counties area. The Guards have never had territorial battalions, but options 1990. Recreated the London Regiment in August 1993, and this was later affiliated to the ERD's division. The Londons were to some extent a resurrection of the Estaisla, pre-1938 regiment drawn from London's existing territorials, but organized along unique lines. The 4 rifle companies wore different cap badges, according to their differing designations. A London Scottish Coy from 1st BN 51st Highland Regiment, D. Queen's Regent Coy, and C. City of London Fusiliers, Coy, both from 8th BN Queen's Fusiliers, and D. London Irish Rifles, Coy, from 4th BN Royal Irish Rangers. In 1999, 2 companies from 4th Volunteer BN Royal Green Jackets were moved into the London Regiment, but were extracted, again in 2007 on the formation of the Rifles, Queen's Division. From its foundation in 1968, the Queen's Division brought together all the old county regiments of London, the home counties in eastern England, and the Fusilier regiments to create 3 large regiments: the Queen's Regiment, the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers, and the Royal Anglian Regiment. From an original 4 regular battalions each, all 3 regiments were reduced in 2 stages. The last of these, following options 1990, brought them each down to 2 regular battalions. 1 regiment Queen's also absorbed a regiment from outside the Queen's Division, and a further cut in 2015 will reduce RRF to 1 regular battalion. The Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment, known as the Tigers, was created in 1992 from the 3 regular battalions of the Queen's Regiment and the single regular battalion of the Royal Hampshire Regiment, the latter from the Prince of Wales's Division, all merged into 2 regular battalions. The territorials associated with PWRR have a particularly complicated history. In 1988, elements of 5 Queens were amalgamated with elements of 6 RRF to create 8th BN Queen's Fusiliers. In 1992, this battalion absorbed a company each of the London Scottish and London Irish, and in 1993, all became part of the London Regiment, as noted above. The Queen's Regiment retained their own cap-badged territorials as their 5th and 6th 7th BNs, but these were amalgamated in 1999 to become 3 PWRR. At the same time, elements of the 6th 7th were amalgamated with 2nd B in Royal Gloucestershire, Berkshire and Wiltshire Regiment, and 5th B in Royal Green Jackets to form the Royal Rifle Volunteers. That battalion was retitled 7 Rifles on the formation of the Rifles in February 2007. Hampshire's territorials had been part of the Wessex Regiment since 1971. In 1994, its 2 battalions were amalgamated into Wuwavalwu, whose subsequent fate has just been mentioned. In 1992, the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers reduced from 3 regular battalions, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd to 2, and from 2 territorial battalions, 5th and 6th to 1/6. The RRF then lost the 6th BN in 1999, when elements became part of the new Tyntese Regiment. However, in April 2006, 5th BN RRF was recreated out of the Royal Fusilier and Light Infantry Companies of the Tyntese Regiment, also absorbing the Light Infantry Company of the East and West Riding Regiment, the C. Durham Light Infantry. Coy was transferred to the Rifles in February 2007. 5 ROF is headquartered in northeast England, maintains embedded companies often referred to as cuckoo companies. In Birmingham within 4th BN Mercian Regiment, London within the London Regiment, and Bury 1 platoon in 4th BN Duke of Lancaster's Regiment. As noted, Army 2020 sees the disbandment of 2 RRF by 2015 as its station in Celle, Germany, closes. Representing the infantry from East Anglia in eastern central England, the Royal Anglian Regiment reduced from 3 regular battalions, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and 3 territorial battalions, 5th, 6th, and 7th, to 2 of each category. Following options, 1990. In 1999, the 2 remaining territorial battalions, 6th and 7th, were amalgamated with 3rd B in Worcestershire and Sherwood, Worcester's regent to create the East of England Regiment. In April 2006, this Beckham III are Anglian, King's Division, the English Northern County Regiments, and the Northern Irish Regiments, originally constituted the King's Division. Northern Ireland's regiments are dealt with below, as they were taken out of the division in 1992. Before Options 1990, the King's Division had 8 regiments. 1. The Yorkshire Volunteers was an entirely territorial regiment with 3 battalions. The Northern Irish were represented by the Royal Irish Rangers with 2 regular and 2 territorial battalions. The remaining 6 English regiments represented Cumbria King's own royal border, Merseyside Kings, Yorkshire Prince of Wales's own, Green Howards and Duke of Wellington's, and Lancashire Queens, Lancashire. These regiments each had 1 regular battalion, and all survived options intact. The territorials of the English regiments other than Yorkshire remained, as they were pre-options thus: 4th BN Corber, 5th 8th BN Kings, and 4th and 5th 8th BN's QLR. In 1993, Yorkshire's territorials were realigned, with 1st, 2nd, and 3rd 4th BNs, Yorkshire Volunteers becoming, respectively, 4th, 5 BN Green Howards, 3rd BNP WO, and 3rd BND WR. The 1999 cutbacks to the TA broke up these short-lived battalions. 4/5. Green Howards were merged with the Fusilier and Light Infantry. Territorials of the Northeast to create the Tyne's Regiment, 3 PWO and 3 DWR, were merged together with the King's own Yorkshire Yeomanry to create the East and West Riding Regiment. 4 KAOR-BR and the 2 territorial battalions of the QL-R became the Lancastrian and Cumbrian Volunteers, and 5/8 Kings merged with Cheshire's territorials from the Mercian Volunteers into the King's and Cheshire Regiment. FOS 2004 had a dramatic effect on the regiments of the King's Division, creating 2 large regiments out of the 6, 1 west of the Pennines, the Duke of Lancaster's Regent, and 1 east, the Yorkshire Regiment. The Duke of Lancaster's Regent was created in 2005 following a merger of the KOR-BR, Kings and QLR. Its 3 regular battalions were merged into 2 in 2007. The regiment's territorials were also formed in 2005 from a merger of the Lancastrian and Cumbrian Volunteers and the 2 King's Reg companies from the King's and Cheshire Regiment. The Yorkshire Regent was created in 2006 by a merger of the PWO Green Howards and DWR. In effect, the resulting 3 regular battalions simply retitled themselves under their new cap badge. The regiment has a single battalion of territorials drawn from the disbanded East and West Riding Regent, bringing 1 company of PWO and 2 companies of DWR and Tyne's Regent, 1 company of Green Howards. Army 2020 will reduce the 3 regular battalions to 2. Prince of Wales's Division. Pre-options 1990, the division, a grouping of the regiments of the North and West Midlands, the West Country and Wales, had consisted of 9 county regiments, each with a single regular battalion, plus 8 territorial battalions. Following options, 3 of the regiments were taken out of the line in 2 different ways. The Royal Hampshire Regent was merged with the Queen's Regent to become the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment, as already noted, while the Gloucestershire Regent was amalgamated with the Duke of Edinburgh's Royal Regent in 1994 to create the Royal Gloucestershire, Berkshire and Wiltshire Regiment. The other 6, Devon and Dorset, Cheshire, Royal Welsh Fusiliers, Royal Regent of Wales, Worcestershire and Sherwood, Foresters and Staffordshire survived for the time being. FOS 2004 made major changes to the division's regiments. For the combined fate of the Devonshire and Dorset Regent and the RGBW Regulars, see below under the Light Division. The remaining 5 regiments, while retaining 5 regular battalions, were made into 2 new regiments, the Mercian Regent and the Royal Welsh Regiment. The Mercian Regent was formed in 2007 as a result of a merger of the Cheshires, Worcestershire and Sherwood, Foresters and Staffords, The resulting 3 regular battalions were like those of Yorkshire, simply retitled and rebadged. With Army 2020, the 3 regular battalions will be merged into 2. The territorials from Cheshire and Staffordshire had been embodied in 2 battalions of the Mershon Volunteers, 1st and 2nd, while those of Worcestershire, Nottinghamshire, and Derbyshire were in 3rd BN, Worcestershire, and Sherwood Foresters. In 1988, the Mershon Volunteers were disbanded, and their manpower moved to the new 3 Cheshire and 3 Staffords, while the WFR received a 4th battalion. In April 1998, the West Midlands Regiment was created out of 4 existing territorial battalions: 5 RRF, 5 LI, 4 WFR, and 3 Staffords. As already stated, 3 WFR was subsumed into the East of England Regiment and 3 Cheshire amalgamated, with 5/8 Kings to become the Kings and Cheshire Regiment. In July 2006, the King's companies were moved to 4th BN Duke of Lancaster's Regiment. The whole of the West Midlands Regiment, the Cheshire companies of the King's and Cheshire Regiment, and the Sherwood Forester companies of the East of England Regiment then became 4th BN Mershon Regiment in 2007. The Royal Welsh Regiment was formed in 2006 from the Royal Welsh Fusiliers and the Royal Regiment of Wales. The new regiment had 2 regular battalions. It also incorporated a territorial battalion which was already called the Royal Welsh Regiment. This unit had been formed in 1999 upon the amalgamation of 3 RWF and 2 RRW. Army 2020 will see the merger of the 2 regular battalions into 1 by 2015. The Royal Irish Regiment was created in 1992 and at that time constituted the largest infantry regiment in the Army. It was formed on the amalgamation of irregulars and territorials of the Royal Irish Rangers, plus the Northern Ireland Home Service battalions of the Ulster Defence Regiment. The Royal Irish Rangers had been part of the King's Division, but the new regiment was taken out of the division on account of its size. On its formation, it had no fewer than 11 battalions in 3 classes, 2 regular battalions 1st and 2nd, 7 home service battalions, all former UDR battalions, and 2 TA battalions 4th and 5th, the latter retaining the title of Royal Irish Rangers. Within a year of formation, the 2 regular battalions had been amalgamated, and in 2001, with the calming of the troubles in Northern Ireland, the home service battalions were reduced to 3. With the end of Operation Banner in Northern Ireland, the home service battalions were finally disbanded in July 2007, and the 1 remaining territorial battalion lost its ranger title, although all soldiers, regulars, and territorials continue to be called rangers. In 2013, the Royal Irish Regiment comprised just 1 regular and 1 territorial battalion and was moved into the Prince of Wales's Division, Light Division. The most imaginative reorganization to come out of FIS 2004 was the transformation in 2007 of the regiments of the Light Division into a single, large regiment called the Rifles. The original regiments of the Light Division, the Light Infantry, and the Royal Green Jackets were 2 large regiments created in 1968 and 1966 respectively, which had originally comprised 6 regular battalions, 3 each for both regiments, and 2 later 6 territorial battalions for Lee and 2 RGJ. Options 1990 saw each regiment reduced to 2 regular battalions in 1992. When faced with the impact of FIS 2004, the LI and RGJ recognized that there was great sense in creating a much larger regiment. They were joined by the Devon and Dorsets and the RGBW, both from the Prince of Wales's division, and now amalgamated into 1 battalion. These latter 2 regiments went through a strange transitional period of being called light infantry. For example, the D&D light infantry, and wearing the green beret of the light division before the actual formation of the Rifles. The 5 regular battalions of the Rifles were derived thus: 1 Rifles from the D&D and RGBW Lee, 2 Rifles from 1 RGJ, 3 Rifles from 2 Lee, 4 Rifles from 2 RGJ, and 5 The story of the RGJ territorials for RGJ and 5 RGJ is described above. Under the PWRR and the London Regiment, the 4 battalions of LI territorials transitioned in 1999. Elements of 5 Lee became part of the West Midlands Regiment. 6 Lee became part of the Royal Rifle Volunteers. 7 Lee became part of the Tyne-Tees Regiment. And 8 Lee, the remnants of which had become part of the King's Own Yorkshire Yeomanry in 1987, subsequently became part of the East and West Riding Regiment. The new Rifles also took back all of their territorials to create 2 new territorial battalions, 6 rifles from the Rifle Volunteers, and 7 rifles from the Royal Rifle Volunteers, and the 2 RGG companies from the London Regiment. Scottish Division. Pre-options 1990, this had 7 regular regiments, but in 1994, the Queen's Own Highlanders were amalgamated with the Gordon Highlanders to create the Highlanders. Scotland's territorials had been organized in 2 regiments, the 52nd Lowland Volunteers to battalions and the 51st Highland Volunteers. 3 battalions, the anachronistic use of these numbers commemorating the 2 Scottish divisions of World War II. In 1995, 1st BN 52nd Lowland became 3rd BN Royal Highland Fusiliers, and 2nd BN 52nd Lowland became simply the Lowland Volunteers. Also in 1995, while 1st BN 51st Highland Volunteers retained its title 2nd. BN 51st Highland became 7th 8th BN Argyll and Sutherland, now Highlanders, and 3rd BN 51st. Highland became 3rd BN the Highlanders. 1999 saw them all reduced to 2 single battalion territorial regiments, the 2 battalions of Lowlanders becoming the 52nd Lowland Regiment, and the 3 battalions of Highlanders, the 51st Highland Regiment. In 2006, FIS established a single large infantry regiment of 5 regular and 2 territorial battalions for Scotland, the Royal Regiment of Scotland. For largely political reasons, the antecedent titles were retained. Within the single regiment, the Royal Scots Borderers, 1st BNSCOTS, formed from an amalgamation of the Royal Scots and the King's Own Scottish Borderers. The Royal Highland Fusiliers, 2nd BNSCOTS, the Black Watch, 3rd BNSCOTS. The Highlanders, 4th BNSCOTS, and the Argyllshire and Sutherland Highlanders, 5th BN Scots. This 5 Scots was reduced in 2013 to a single company, Balaclava Coy, confined to a purely ceremonial role in Scotland. The 2 TA battalions are 52nd Lowland, 6 Scots, and 51st Highland, 7 Scots. The following infantry units are separate from the administrative divisional or Anosian parachute regiment. The pairs were never incorporated in the divisional structure and have been largely unaffected by any of the amalgamations and disbandments of units since World War II. Indeed, the 3 regular battalions that survived the UHL immediate post-war reductions 1st, 2nd, and 3rd survive to this day. In 1993, following options, the 3 territorial battalions 4th, 10th, and 15th were reduced to just 1 for para. It has been Army policy to maintain a minimum of 2 regular battalions trained in the parachute role. This has generally been rotated through the 3, with the out-of-role battalion being held as a normal light role infantry battalion, although in the 1970s, 1 battalion converted to the mechanized role. The parachute role battalions are assigned to their own specialist formation, 16th Air Assault Brigade. However, as a result of FOSS 2004 and 2006, the 1st BN was permanently assigned to the new Special Forces support group within the Directorate of Special Forces, Royal Gurkha Rifles. Prior to options 1990, there were 4 regiments of Gurkha Rifles: 2nd King Edward VII Zone, 6th Queen Elizabeth Zone, 7th Duke of Edinburgh Zone, and 10th Princess Mary Zone. Each had a single battalion 2nd BN 7th Gurkhas, having been disbanded. In 1987, options created the Royal Gurkha Rifles in 1994. originally with 3 battalions but reduced to 2 in 1996. Until that date, the Gurkhas always formed a major part of the Hong Kong and Brunei garrisons, and they still maintain one battalion in Brunei, largely funded by the Sultan. For administration purposes, the RGR is grouped with Gurkha signals, engineers and logistics in the Brigade of Gurkhas. There are also 2 additional infantry companies permanently assigned as demonstration troops, Siding Khoi to RMA Sandhurst and Mandalay Khoi to the infantry battle School Brecon. It should be noted too that to alleviate infantry undermanning, elsewhere 3 complete Gurkha companies, known as reinforcement companies, were maintained within 3 British battalions up until 2014. Royal Gibraltar Regiment. Originally a reserve unit, the Royal Gibraltar Regiment was placed on the regular establishment following the withdrawal of the British Army garrison from Gibraltar in 1991. It comprises 2 regular and 1 reserve companies plus an artillery troop. United Kingdom Special Forces. In 1987, the Special Forces were brought together in UKSF, a new organization established to better coordinate SF activities. The requirement for additional forces led in 2005 to the creation of the Special Reconnaissance Regiment SRR, the nucleus for which was provided by 14 Intelligence Company, a unit previously focused on the intelligence campaign in Northern Ireland. In 2005, the Special Forces Support Group was also created out of a number of existing units to provide additional direct support to UKSF. The organization of UKSF is 22 Special Air Service Regiment, Special Boat Service Royal Marines, Special Reconnaissance Regiment, 21 Special Air Service Regiment Reserve, 23 Special Air Service Regiment Volunteers, Special Forces Support Group, 1 Para, FCOI, Royal Marines, 18 Signal Regiment, Joint SF Aviation Wing Army Air Corps. The AAC provides the Army's own aviation support in peace and war. In peacetime, the majority of AAC units are under the Joint Helicopter Command, and due to the joint nature of most operations, the AAC is invariably joined by helicopters of the RN or RAF. Thelator's helicopters, with their heavier lift capability, have a particularly important role in support of ground operations. The AAC also includes significant numbers of integrated RLC, REAM, ANDAGC personnel. For many years, Army aviation had a largely support function, but since their earliest days, helicopters were armed to provide fire support on the battlefield. The most successful of these was the Lynx TOW, but the introduction of the Apache attack helicopter, delivery of which was completed in 2007, has provided the AAC with a true combat capability. The AAC today fulfills 5 roles: offensive action in support of Thelan battle, intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition and reconnaissance, ISTAR, artillery fire control, command support, and general utility through the carriage of personnel and equipment, and casualty evacuation. To support these roles, the AAC employs 6 types of helicopter and 1 type of fixed-wing aircraft, attack helicopter. Mk1, the Westland, Apache Westland Lynx, AO-7, AO-9, and AH-9A, to be replaced from 2014, with future Lynx to be known as Wildcat AH-1, Westland Gazelle, AO-1, Eurocopter AS-350BB Squirrel HT Bell 212 AH-2 and an independent flight in Brunei only. Eurocopter AS-365N3 Dauphin 2, supporting UKSF. And the fixed-wing Britain, Norman Islander AL-1, CC-2, and Defender AL-1, AL-2. In 2013, the AAC had 2 Apache attack regiments 3 and 4 AAC, 2 Lynx regiments 1 and 9 AAC, 1 Gazelle regiment 5 AAC, 2 training regiments 2 and 7 AAC, 1 territorial regiment 6 AAC. By 2016, 1 AAC and 9 AAC will merge and be equipped with Wildcat. The AAC also maintains 4 independent squadrons and 4 independent flights, including a jungle training flight in Brunei and a training flight at Batus in Canada. Royal Army Chaplains Department. The Royal Army Chaplains Department, RHED, provides ordained clergy to the Army. The chaplains, known as padres, are predominantly Christian. But the department also includes Jewish chaplains. In recent times, the Army has also made provision for other faiths, although their inclusion in the RACHD is not formal. Royal Logistic Corps. On its formation in 1992, the RLC represented a major organizational change. By bringing together the Army's main transport and supply organizations, it was formed from an amalgamation of the Royal Corps of Transport Royal, Army Ordnance Corps, Royal Pioneer Corps, Army Catering Corps, and the postal and courier elements of the RE, who retain their recap badge. The RLC contains more regiments and units than any other arm or service. The Corps is primarily responsible for the storage and delivery of all combat supplies, fuel, rations, water, and ammunition, as well as some specialists enabling activities including EOD shared with the RE movement. Pre-Army 2020, there have been 4 main functional areas. Formations support 1, 2, 3, 4, and 12 logistic support regions. Force support 6, 7, 9, and 27 logistic regions, and 10 Queen's Own Gurkha logistic regent, enabling 11 EOD, 17 port and maritime, 23 pioneer, 24 postal and courier, and 29 transport and movement regions, and training 5 and 25 regiments. Apart from 11 EOD regent, which is placed in 29 EOD and search group in 8th Engineer BDE, and 13 Air Assault Support Regent in 16th Air ASSLT BDE Army. 2020 reduces and reclassifies units and places them in 3 logistic brigades. 101st Logistic Brigade, 1, 3, and 4, Close Support Logistic Regions, 9, 10 Gurkha, and 27 Theater Logistic Regions, 151, 154, and 157 Reserve Transport Regions, 156 Reserve Supply Regiment, 102nd Logistic Brigade, 6 and 7 Force Logistic Regions, 150 and 158 Reserve Transport Regions, 159 Reserve Supply Regiment, 104th Logistic Brigade, 17 Port and Maritime Regent, 165 Reserve Port and Enabling Regent, 29 and 162 Reserve Postal, Courier, and Movement Regents, 152 Reserve Fuel Support Regent, 167 Reserve Catering Support Regent, 2 Army Medical Services. Army Medical Services AMS were established to administer the 4 corps providing medical and health care for the Army, the Royal Army. Medical Corps RAMP, Royal Army Veterinary Corps RAVC, Royal Army. Dental Corps RADC, and Queen Alexandra's Royal Army Nursing Corps. Rank. Reservists are of critical importance to the AMS and include the First Aid Nursing Yeomanry Princess Royals Volunteer Corps. The RAVC headquartered at Melton Mowbray is responsible for the provision, training and care of animals, mainly horses and dogs, but including some more exotic regimental mascots. It includes the 1st Military Working Dog Regent, whose 101st, 105th MWDSQNs are distributed throughout the Army. In general terms, the regular and TA medical regiments have provided direct support to the Field Army, with 2nd Medical BDE containing all the field hospitals. Under the Army 2020 rationalization, 101st Logistic BDE will have 1, 4, and 5 armed medical regents. 102nd Logistic BDE will have 2 and 3 medical regents, both hybrid and 3 reserve medical regents, and 16 medical regents. Another hybrid is allotted to 16th Air Assault Brigade. 2 and medical BDE will contain the 3 regular field hospitals, 22, 33, and 34, 10 reserve field hospitals, and 3 reserve support units. Corps of Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers. REM consists entirely of technicians and mechanics, responsible for equipment support, the repair and maintenance and, where necessary, recovery of all equipment. Corps personnel are deployed in every unit, invariably grouped in light aid detachments lads, but belong to a number of parent REM battalions. The 5 close support battalions, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, 19 combat. Service Support BN disbanded 2013, and 7 Air Assault BN were all assigned to regular brigades with 2 Force Support Battalions, 101 and 104 assigned to 102nd and 101st Logistic Brigades respectively. The REAM had no formed territorial battalions, but the future reserves plan creates for 101, 102, 104 and 106 from disbanded RLC units. Under Army 2020, 7 Air Assault BN REAM remains with 16th Air Assault BDE. All other REAM battalions are reclassified and reorganized as follows: 101st Logistic Brigade, 3, 4, and 6 Armed Close Support BNs, 5 Force Support and formed from 101 and 104 BNs, 103 and 105 Reserve Battalions, 102nd Logistic Brigade, 1 and 2 Close Support BNs, 101, 102, 104, and 106 Reserve Battalions. Adjutant General's Corps. The second large corps created out of options was the AGC, an amalgamation of the administrative services to form 4 branches. Except for the Provost branch, GC personnel are individually distributed across the Army. Therefore, GC branches are Provost branch comprising the Royal Military Police RMP Military, Provost Staff MPs, and Military Provost Guard Service MPGs. Army 2020 creates the first Military Police BDE, a hybrid regular and reserve formation, which will contain the 3 RMP regiments 1, 3, and 4, the Special Investigations Branch Regent, a new Special Operations Unit, and the Military Corrective Training Center. Army Legal Services ALS, incorporating the Army Legal Corps. Staff and Personnel Services SPS comprising the Royal Army Pay Corps, RAPC, and the clerks of the RAOC, and all other regiments and corps. Educational and Training Services ETs, incorporating the Royal Army Educational Corps RAEC. The majority of personnel in the AGC were that corps cap badge, but elements of some branches, for example, the RMP, retain their old badges. Small Arms School Corps, the SAF, whose headquarters is at Warminster, is responsible for maintaining proficiency across the Army in small arms, support weapons and range management. Barely 160 strong, it comprises only senior NCOs and officers. Spread around the Army's schools and main range complexes. Intelligence Corps. The overall role of the INCorps is to collect information and provide intelligence for defense and security requirements. The headquarters is at the Defense Intelligence and Security Center. Chicksands and operations in the field have been conducted by 3 regular and 2 reservoir to function battalions. Army 2020 will see far greater integration of intelligence and surveillance assets in the 1 ST Intelligence and Surveillance BDE, which will also include RA and R signals units as noted above. In addition to the regular military, intelligence battalions 1, 2, and 4, there will be 4 reserve battalions 3, 5, 6, and 7. 12 hybrid units, the Land Intelligence Fusion Center, and NID Defense Cultural Specialist Unit in the Specialist Group. Military Intelligence, Air Reserve Unit, Royal Army Physical Training Corps. The RAPTC, which received its royal title in 2010, is quartered at Aldershot, with the Army School of Physical Training. This small corps of largely non-commissioned officers is responsible for physical training and education, and has personnel deployed in every unit of the Army. Corps of Army Music. The CAMU was established in 1994 and contains all remaining military bands. Its headquarters are at Kneller Hall, co-located with the Royal Military School of Music. Prior to options, there were 69 bands each, regiment and corps having its own, but the great majority were lost or reduced from 1993 onwards, and the figure today stands at 23 regular and 19 territorial bands. All regiments of the Household Division have retained their own bands, but each corps now has a single band. The cavalry has been reduced to 2 bands, 1 heavy and 1 light, and the infantry now have just 1 band per division or similar grouping. While providing music is the core function of military bandsmen, on operations they also continue to Provide support to the Army Medical Services. British Overseas Territories. In addition, 3 British Overseas Territories have units considered part of British Army. Bermuda Regiment, a battalion-sized light infantry unit made up largely of conscripts. Falkland Islands Defence Force, a reserve light infantry company. Royal Montserrat Defence Force, about 20 reserve personnel. The Army on operations and at war. Command. The British Army does not conduct operations in isolation from the other services, even in Northern Ireland. A predominantly Army operation, the authority armed services were actively involved. All operations also include significant elements from other government agencies, and operations in Northern Ireland were, of course, led by the police for the greater part of the campaign. Operations of any scale are therefore tri-service or joint operations, and are commanded by a joint force commander who may be provided by the Joint Force Headquarters JFHQ, which sits within the Permanent Joint Headquarters PJHQ, established at Northwood, Middlesex in 1996. PJHQ is commanded by the Chief of Joint Operations CJO, a tri-service three-star post. Operations overseas, especially of a medium and large-scale nature, tend also to be part of international coalitions, and these entail the appointment of a British National Component Commander who is invariably double-hatted as the Joint Force Commander in the coalition headquarters. He will exercise direct command of his assigned maritime, land, and air components through their respective commanders, and may have direct command of certain national support elements. Operations outside the UK are commanded by the Joint Force Commander working to the CJO at PJHQ. Should occasion arise inside the UK, command is provided by the Standing Joint Commander, SJC. CLF is permanently double-hatted as the SJC, and Headquarters SJC, consisting of personnel drawn from all 3 services, is co-located with Army HQ. ED forces. In peacetime, the Army has always maintained forces at various states of readiness and training. Such plans are invariably subject to major change during the conduct of operations, acknowledging the fact that no plan survives contact with the enemy. This principle will apply just the same for the Army 2020 structures. In 1996, the Joint Rapid Reaction Force JRRF was set up to make available a rapidly deployable array of forces, drawn from all 3 services to meet demands as they arose. The JRRF is, in effect, CJO's assigned deployable force. Thacker of the JRRF was 16th Air Assault BDE, and from the Royal Navy 3rd Commando BDE, but other operationally ready formations and units from the Field Army could be assigned, as required. To meet this demand, the Army maintained 1 brigade-sized group at high readiness, an airborne task force, a battalion-sized alarms grouping at very high readiness, the spearhead-led element of further. It's a battalion-sized grouping at extremely high readiness. THE-JRRF was deployed, for example, on Operation Barras II, Sierra Leone, in 2000. Since the onset of the war in Iraq and to the overlapping and subsequent demands of the war in Afghanistan, high readiness brigades and units have been routinely assigned to these operations and have therefore been unavailable to the JRRF. The principles of organization are the same, whether the requirement is for general or conventional war, that is, operations of the type that NATO was trained to fight against the Warsaw Pact on the Central Front in Europe, and actually fought against Iraq in the 2 Gulf Wars in 1991 and 2003, or for all other operations. The generic term for the latter is operations other than war, OOTW. In such operations, units might be entirely re-rolled, as occurred in Northern Ireland, when artillery and armored regiments were on occasion re-rolled as infantry, or organized to conduct expeditionary operations in a counterinsurgency role. Tactical formations, divisions, and their subordinate brigades contain combinations of all arms and services and are termed combined arms. Formations. A division will be task organized to achieve its assigned mission. And while the division might allocate additional combat support and combat service support units to its brigades, some of these units will also be retained as divisional troops. The brigade level is usually the lowest which can operate. In general, war independently of a divisional structure, as it has the capacity to control its own combat support and combat service support units and all. Operations require considerable logistic and enabling resources. As noted earlier, divisions and brigades have had relatively permanently assigned support units, but Army 2020 places the majority of these in force troops, command available to be assigned as required. Battle groups. Brigades will also task organize and, to achieve the correct balance of forces, will create battle groups out of their combat units. A battle group might, for example, comprise 2 squadrons of tanks and 2 companies of infantry. This being referred to as a square battle group and shown in task organization tables as 2-2. An infantry heavy battle group of say 1 tank squadron and 3 infantry companies would be shown as 1-3. These battle groups will usually retain their own cap-badged reconnaissance troops platoons, but infantry mortars and especially infantry anti-tank subunits will also be allocated according to brigade requirements. Battle groups might be allocated some combat support elements, such as a troop or squadron of engineers for specific tasks, but apart from their forward fire control team's artillery, battery commanders, and their assigned forward observation officers. FU's artillery is usually controlled at the highest level to provide the best possible fire support across the brigade or division. The battle group can also subdivide, if required, by combining armored squadrons and infantry companies and adding perhaps a section of anti-tank weapons, an artillery FU, a mortar fire controller, MFC, and a troop of engineers. Such alarms groupings were once called combat teams, but are more properly known as company squadron groups. These groups will most often consist of a full company of infantry and a full squadron of tanks, with a troop of the latter designated as intimate support to the infantry. For the entirety of the modern Army's existence, groupings of the main combat arms, the tanks, and the infantry have been ad hoc in all attempts to create permanent groupings in war and in peace have been defied. An armored regiment or an infantry battalion will therefore very rarely conduct operations as a complete cap-badged unit, enduring pressures on manpower. It also mean that they often receive considerable reinforcements from other cap badges prior to embarking on operations. Operations since 1990. The demands of the Cold War and the threat of a Warsaw Pact attack were the main focus of military planning for decades. To that end, the Army was organized, equipped, and trained primarily for its role in NATO, although this considerable military effort, especially to bore, was never classified as operational. The Army was constantly distracted from this focus by actual operations elsewhere, such as Northern Ireland and long-standing commitments to the United Nations. The latter are now greatly reduced, but Operation Tosca has a company group continuing to support the UN on the UN line in Cyprus. The years of training for General War bore fruit in 1991 in the successful campaign to liberate Kuwait, the first Gulf War on Operation Granby, during which the Army deployed 1st Armed Div with 2 armored brigades, 4th and 7th, and an array of additional units. However, the 1990s were largely dominated by peacekeeping operations in the former Yugoslavia, in Bosnia, and from 1999, in Kosovo. On Operation Grapple, begun in February 1992, the UK contributed a Larga battle group to the UN Protection Force, EPRA-4 in Bosnia. From late 1995, a NATO Implementation Force IFO are relieved, PRO-4, on Operation Resolute. This transformed into Operation Lodestar when EPRA became the Stabilization Force SFOR in December 1996. The British contribution saw HQ's 1st Armed Div and 3rd Div act in turn as HQ Multinational Division South West. 4 brigades, 4th Mech, 1st Mech, 20th Armed and 7th Armed rotated in theater through Bosnia between October 1995 and late 1997, after which British forces began to be reduced. From 2004, European Union Force UFUR assumed responsibility for peacekeeping, and the UK ceased its permanent commitment to Bosnia in 2007. The UK contribution to the NATO peacekeeping force in Kosovo KFOR began in 1999 with the deployment of 1R Irish under Operation Agricola. Initial commitment involved a battalion-sized group, subsequently reduced to a limited permanent force. However, crises saw 1 RGJ deployed as the spearhead-led element in 2005, and a further surge by 2 rifles in 2008. The UK's permanent contribution ceased. In 2009, except for a small number of staff and specialists, elsewhere, 1999 saw elements of 2 RGR and UKSF deployed to East Timor on Operation Warden. The causes of peacekeeping and humanitarian relief then led directly to the UK's intervention in Sierra Leone in 2001. Troops were deployed initially to support the UN mission by providing an infantry. Battalion 2 are Anglian, later 1 are Irish to an international military assistance and training team IMIT on Operation Palliser, but the Civil War required an escalated response under a joint task force based on a reinforced 1 para battle group. Elements of 1 para and 22 SAS were also engaged in Operation Beras to release military hostages captured by local rebels. Other than this, Africa has largely been the province of training teams. But the after-effects of the Arab Spring saw a UKSF involvement in Libya in 2011 on Operation Elemi and the deployment of advisors and trainers to Mali in 2013. Throughout the period until 2007, the backdrop of the troubles in Northern Ireland required the lengthiest operation in British military history, Operation Banner. In the worst days of the early 1970s, around 28,000 soldiers were deployed in the province, but a steady state of around 10,000 is assumed by the mid-1980s. Headquarters Northern Ireland deployed its 3 brigades with 6 resident infantry battalions on, originally 18-month and subsequently 2-year tours. Additionally, a minimum of 4 units, not always infantry, deployed on 4.5-month, later 6-month roulement tours, together with a great host of other units. From the turn of the century, active operations by soldiers on the ground had greatly diminished, but in total 763 security force personnel were killed, 637 of them British soldiers before operations ended on the 31st of July. While there remains an undercurrent of extremist activity and 2 Royal Engineers were murdered in 2009, the situation is now normalized. The army is no longer responsible for security in the province, but retains a standby commitment to support the police under Operational Lytic. Units are now assigned to 38th Irish Brigade.